Thanks, Kate, and good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to Social Work Week 2023, the third Social Work Week so far and the biggest yet by far. My name is Sarah Blackmore and I'm Exec Director of Professional Practice and External Engagement at Social Work England, and I lead the team who have put this amazing week together. Before the week gets going, I wanted to start by saying a huge thank you to the social work profession. I'm under no illusions about how difficult things are at the moment, regardless of what area of practice you are in. You are doing an amazing job in very difficult circumstances, and everything you do makes a profound difference to millions of people's lives every day. The country is lucky to have you. I thought it might also be helpful just to remind people who we are at Social Work England and what we're about. Many of you will be aware and will have heard this before, but some won't, and we still do get questions about who we are and what our role is. Social Work England is the specialist social work regulator for the social work profession in England, which is now responsible for the regulation of almost 100,000 social workers across the country. We hold a register for those 100,000 social workers, so if you want to use the protected title of social worker, you need to be registered with us. We set the professional standards for the social work profession and the initial education and training standards and approve and inspect qualifying courses. We also approve post-qualifying courses for people who are or want to become AMPs, that's approved mental health professionals, and those who are or want to become best interests assessors. And we handle concerns raised to us about a social worker and assess whether a social worker's practice has fallen short of the professional standards. So for all of these reasons, very different from a professional association or membership body, which people sometimes confuse us with. Ongoing dialogue and collaboration with you is central to who we are and how we operate. Many of you will have already met our regional engagement leads, who are all registered social workers themselves and who have been out and about since our very earliest days, working with a range of partners, including employers, people with lived experience of social workers themselves, and education and training providers. And they, together with our education quality assurance team, are raising awareness and helping to ensure the consistent implementation of our standards, including sharing analysis of when things go wrong. And they will continue to drive forward engagement across the regions. Putting on a week like this is a key part of that. And as at its heart, social work is about relationships. It is for us as the social work regulator then to lead the way in developing and nurturing our relationships with social workers across the country in every context, with colleagues who train social workers and help prepare them for practice, and with people who use social work services. Doing this and doing this well is our main aspiration and intent. So for Social Work Week 2023, we wanted to bring people together to learn, connect and engage on the values and principles which form the backbone of effective social work practice. Our main themes running across the week are the breadth of social work, lived, learned and professional experiences, social work identity and sharing best practice, and looking back at the past 3 years since we've been running Social Work Week and looking forward to what's next for social work in England. At a time of great uncertainty, but also a time when social work is so vital to society, Social Work Week creates a space for us to collectively reflect and consider our own personal role to enable change. The week is a chance to dip into a virtual programme of positive activity co-produced with our wonderful National Advisory Forum and the sector through our independent programme to examine the growing value that social work as a regulated profession adds to society. The week is intentionally scheduled to complement the annual World Social Work Day celebrations on the 21st of March 2023, which recognises the hard work and dedication of social workers on an international stage, and whose theme this year is respecting diversity through joint social action. Social Work Week is targeted at anyone with an interest in social work in England, including social workers, people with lived experience, professionals, education providers, and the many stakeholder organisations who share our ambition to build an accurate and rich picture of social work practice in England today and celebrate the amazing work of this profession. And we are so thrilled that over 12,000 of you have chosen to join us. We have a fantastic day and week lined up for you, and I'm delighted that you've chosen to share it with us, and I hope you enjoy the week. I'm delighted too to hand over now to Iffy and Tegan from our National Advisory Forum, who will take things from here. Iffy and Tegan, over to you.
Thank you so much. We are hosting the opening session as co-production is a core part of both Social Work England and the Social Work Week. So we wanted to start by putting it front and centre. In this session, we'll be sharing a little bit about who the forum are, what we do, and what our experiences of co-producing with Social Work England have been. The National Advisory Forum was set up in May 2020 and now has had 3 rounds of recruitment. It is made of registered and practicing social workers, social work academics, students, and those with lived experience of social work. There is an aim for diversity within these of age, gender, geography, and race. We meet every couple of months online or in person to work together through ideas and to catch up. We also work individually on co-production requests from various parts of the organisation, which are basically requests for us to work on something with a team of people who work at Social Work England, bringing our thoughts and ideas. We can choose that based on interest as well as what experience we have. We also act as a critical friend.
Next slide. Next one, please. Hi everyone, I'm Iffy, also lived experience member of the National Advisory Forum. The forum is more or less the primary hub for co-production within the organisation, Social Work England, and we try and keep the key sort of tenets of the way we operate with co-production to make it relationship based. So the relationship between the different departments within the organisation and members of the National Advisory Forum are strengthened, and through continued working relationships and also varied working relationships, we try and keep the involvement meaningful. Anyone who's actually getting involved with a piece of work is actually having a meaningful input, actually getting a meaningful reward from taking part in that co-production. And we try and keep it reciprocal as well. With it being reciprocal, it's not just a case of the different departments or whoever might need some more co-produce reaching out to the National Advisory Forum. We can also reach out to the organisation, and whether it's make requests, ask for work to be co-produced from our end as well. And all these three put together make sure we're sort of keeping a good balance and making sure we're working in the strongest way possible. Slide, please. So far, we've achieved quite a lot as a National Advisory Forum around co-production. Some of our achievements so far include establishing co-production as a standard way of working within Social Work England. So most of the work that's done within the organisation now is co-produced to some extent, and some of it is completely co-produced from start to beginning. We've built relationships with different areas in the organisation, different areas across the organisation, including with the leadership teams and with the board running Social Work England. We've tried to create an inclusive culture where both lived and learned experience are valued just as equally, whether it's within the pieces of work or just within the culture of how Social Work England operates, and definitely how we in the National Advisory Forum operate. We've also developed our own co-production training internally, which members of the organisation within Social Work England all have access to and all can take part in. And periodically we have these training sessions set up for anyone to attend. Next up, we've got basically we've got an open letter from National Advisory Forum just to share our appreciation from the sector, the National Advisory Forum. And for that, I'll hand you over to Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ashley, and I am a member of the Social Work England National Advisory Forum as someone with lived and learned experience of social work. I wanted to take a moment to speak to you all about the open letter that the National Advisory Forum pulled together as a part of the Social Work in England report. And I believe we're going to be really helpful and try and link it for you in the chat so that you'll be able to get over there and have a look. Part of the reason the National Advisory Forum wanted to pull together an open letter to social workers at the moment is a way of acknowledging the power of social work. We've all had lots of different types of intervention in our lives, whether it be adults, children's, mental health. And being honest and open, not all of those experiences have been amazing, but there are really, really, really standout pieces of social work that each of us can acknowledge that have helped to protect us or validate our experience or prevent us from making decisions that weren't necessarily the best for us at a point in time, or to help us better understand our journey. So in the context of social work at the moment, what we see is a lot of quite harsh narratives, and really not being able to dive really deep into the power of social work and the influence that it has in people's lives, the changes it makes, the power to heal that it has. So we wanted to take a moment to thank social workers for operating under really, really difficult circumstances at the moment, but also to make sure that you know that those really good pieces of social work, those interventions that are meaningful, the work that you do with people, the relationships you build, they do have a power, they do matter, and they do really, really change people's lives. So in acknowledging that it's not always 100% and the possibility to grow and continue growing and learning, one of the most important parts of that is to be able to acknowledge, one, the hard work that goes into it, two, the really difficult circumstances that you guys are operating in on a day-to-day basis, and three, to be able to shout about when it does go right. So we hope that you will pop over and have a look at the open letter in the context of the Social Work in England report, and look at some of our reflections on social work and what it's meant for all of us. And just to take this moment to say that we understand that it's difficult, but you do have the power to have a really, really positive impact on people's lives. And when you do, it is really, really appreciated.
So for the rest of the session today, we've got three different things we're presenting to you. So we've got a panel discussion on social work co-production and regulation, a case study of co-producing our strategy, and a case study of co-producing our decision review group. Hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a recorded conversation that we're having between some members of our National Advisory Forum as this part of the opening sessions at Social Work Week. This is Us, Reflections of Social Work, Co-Production and Regulation. So I will first invite people to introduce themselves and say what their experience in social work is, whether that's lived or learned experience. So if we could start with Gillian and then we'll go around.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm Gillian Brannan. My experience of social work has primarily been learned experience of social work. I've been a practitioner for almost 30 years. Most of my experience has been in the field of working with older people, but I've also had a lot of experience in working in mental health services. So I kind of feel that because I've been a practitioner for quite a long time, that I've seen a lot of changes in social work over that time, changes in terms of kind of the focus of practice, a lot of kind of legislation changes, but I think that sort of fundamentally the kind of things that underpin social work haven't really changed greatly, and I think particularly the value base of social work is the kind of thing that I always hang on to, and that's been a real sort of part of my experience of kind of working in a values-based way.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Gillian, and for being with us today. Amina, if you could speak next.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Amina Atachli, and I'm a member of the National Advisory Forum. My experience of social work has been learned experience, same as Gillian's. I worked mostly the whole of my career, 22 years, in children and family social work. And of that, I've spent 22 years working for the local authority and the last year and a half with the NHS, and really focused now on kind of children's mental health. I think that's where my passion lies, on young people in care, or young people who are care leavers, adopted young people, and how we can support them to kind of overcome difficulties they had early in life, and how they can kind of, you know, progress and have that reasonably good adulthood. And I've been a member of the NAF since the beginning, with the last 3 years. That's me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Amina. And we'll go around to Isaac to introduce as well.
Hi everybody, so I'm Isaac Samuels. I'm somebody with lived and living experience of mental ill health and disability. So primarily I joined the NAF to share those experiences, but over the last probably 10 years, I've kind of been in this really strange place of working with social workers, alongside social workers, and now consider myself to have a career in kind of, you know, co-production. So I've used my lived experiences to really help social workers, social work practice be the best it possibly can be. And I think I'm in a bit of a grey area. So a bit of lived, bit of learned experience, and we'll continue to learn and be alongside the profession, because it's made such a difference in my life, and social workers can. And when they work with people with lived experience, it just is wonderful, it enables people to live their best lives.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that, Isaac. And yeah, thanks to the three of you for being with us here today for this part of the opening session. It's great to have three of the founding members of the National Advisory Forum who've worked with us for 3 years already, which has flown by. So if we move to the first question, so what we'd like to ask you around what your experience has been of co-producing with Social Work England. And if I invite Gillian to speak to that question first, please.
Okay, thank you. I suppose my experience of co-producing with Social Work England has actually really been incredibly broad. When I joined the NAF, I suppose I kind of thought that co-production might just be in a sort of advisory capacity, and there may not necessarily be a lot of opportunities for hands-on work with the organisation. And in actual fact, it's been the complete opposite of that. That the co-production has really been hands-on, and I think that as my experience as an understanding of co-production has really grown, I kind of feel that that's actually the only way that it can be. That actually, if you kind of get in amongst kind of what's really going on in this organisation, that actually you could have an opportunity to affect real change, and that's what co-production, I think, should be, and what kind of lies at the heart of it. I think that one of the things that I've really thought a lot about recently about my experiences of co-producing with Social Work England is actually just the breadth of what I've been involved in over those 3 years. So I've been involved in, for example, part of the process in terms of recruiting new board members, been involved in developing new policies internally for the organisation. Also been involved in kind of things that are outward facing from the organisation, like Social Work in England report, for example. So just actually that kind of real breadth of the fact that co-production can take place at all sorts of different levels and different places within Social Work England. And that's actually been a real sort of central part of the experience for me, I think, just knowing that actually co-production can work in lots of different ways. And that all of those are really valid and really quite rewarding, and actually have an opportunity to affect change for this organisation right across it, essentially. So my experience, I found it really rewarding. I found it really challenging. It's sort of opened my eyes to a lot of different things, and I think not only the experience of co-producing with Social Work England, but also the experience of co-producing alongside other members of the forum, and that's been really valuable. Just kind of learning from other people, very much as part of taking things forward. So I think that's kind of been broadly my experience and what I've got out of it.
Yeah, lovely reflections, Gillian. So thanks for those. And yeah, we've been very lucky to have your expertise and your skills put to that array of different pieces of work over the years that we've talked about. So yeah, thank you for that. Isaac, you want to speak to that same question about what your experiences have been?
Yeah, so my experience, very similar to Gillian's, when I first joined, I didn't necessarily feel or think that we would be doing the types of co-production that we did. I didn't have any expectations other than I really wanted to help a new organisation think about what matters to people. What I'd say is, in my experience, there probably lots of passion that we sometimes need to contain, because actually you learn how to co-produce. It's about the conditions you create, about the relationships, and we've been involved in so much more than I would have ever imagined. Some of those spaces, particularly when I think about DRG, the Decision Review Group, having someone with lived experience in those spaces, looking at, you know, cases of individual complaints or fitness practice processes, and really thinking about what does this mean to an organisation? How does an organisation respond? How do they improve the process from not only, you know, the perspective of an organisation or the process, but actually how does it make the experience better for people? And that isn't just people with lived experience, it's social workers. I've learned so much, and I think Social Work England is one of those places that it's I would say, learning environment where our collective sharing of knowledge has been so important, and it feels very less them and us, more like we are together trying to achieve something really special, and that is co-producing. We don't have all the answers, but we're trying, and it really is important. And regulation is probably not really something that I fully understood, but I certainly see the value in co-production around regulation, because ultimately it's about how social workers can be the best possible social workers in their roles.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, thanks for those reflections. And yeah, the fact that you've learned so much is quite ironic, because yeah, I don't think there's anyone that I've personally learned more about co-production from than you, and that's had a really big impact on both how the National Advisory Forum has formed and how Social Work England has went on to embrace co-production as a whole. So yeah, thank you for that. So if I could move on and ask you another question, Gillian. So what are your hopes for the future of co-production in regulation?
I think that over the last 3 years, I think that the National Advisory Forum members have really kind of set a sort of huge foundation, and I've already grown from that massively. I think in the way that, you know, Isaac's just talking about, things have really kind of developed, and I think that interestingly, Social Work England are just sort of so open to co-production in the first place by having the National Advisory Forum, but I think also kind of really welcoming still that kind of critical challenge that the National Advisory Forum can offer, and that's a sort of ongoing process. I think that that's probably one of the areas of work for the future, is kind of actually sort of building on that foundation and really kind of growing it and developing it. I think that the future of co-production regulation is very much just about kind of keeping it on the agenda, making sure that it still happens, and that actually this really important foundation that's been set continues. And that will continue for me, I think, in terms of sort of bringing in other voices and hearing from other people. So really sort of maybe extending some of those opportunities to co-produce. That it's about the National Advisory Forum very much as a mechanism. But I think that Social Work England have also started to do things that co-produce with a much wider range of people. So, for example, I remember going to some workshops around the changes to CPD requirements and what sort of, and actually people were joining those focus groups, maybe for the first time being involved in some kind of co-production work about setting that agenda and moving it forward. So I think the future of co-production regulation is very much about building on the foundation and really kind of extending it, and actually hearing from as many people as possible to build change in the organisation, and to kind of like sort of just strengthen what's been going on.
Yeah, well said and agreed. Yeah, I think that the longevity of that and the continue of it as we move forward into the next strategy cycle and the next parts of the business is really important. Amina, if I could ask you that same question as well.
Yeah, sure. Yes. So my first hope kind of flows nicely from what Gillian was just talking about. And if I think about my own career and being in social work for the years I've been, it has primarily been focused on children and young people, young adults. And I think what I really gained massively from the advisory forum was that kind of diverse group of people with both learned and lived experience, but really in lots of different areas of social work. And that really has enriched me as a kind of member of the National Advisory Forum. I've learned so much. I remember some of the sessions. I think last year in the Social Work Week, I did a session with a regional lead for South East, Kate Metcalf, where we did a session with adults, elderly population, which I've never worked with, and that was just fascinating. I've learned so much. So in terms of the hope for future of co-production, I'm just thinking that continuing that kind of diversity of experience, because that's what makes the forum, I think, what it is and what it's grown to be. And I think for me, to continue to be so well supported, because we have a really good structure around us. We have you, Jack, who you look after us so well in our roles, and then of course your colleagues who do different bits of work with us. So there's a really welcoming infrastructure that supports the work that we do, which is great. And one of my big hopes as well is that a forum in some way attracting and enabling frontline social workers to be more involved in the forum. And I know that's really difficult because frontline social workers are so busy, the days are very short for all the work they have to do. But in some way, I guess, working with local authorities to encourage that participation, because we need to hear from those workers at the front line about what is important to them and how we can help them to be the best they can in the job that they do. So I think that would be wonderful. And of course, to continue to kind of support with the forum and the co-production to be part of every area of Social Work England, for everyone to think, okay, we are doing a piece of work. How can we benefit from the forum's advice and support in that? So I think that they're my hopes for the future of it.
Yeah, really great points. And yeah, we're definitely aligned with those. The continuing to work to ensure that frontline social workers can actively contribute. Yeah, that's something for us to continue working on. And yeah, certainly the point that you made around diversity being one of the key strengths of the forum and how we work is definitely something that we're going to continue to work to ensure remains the case. Okay, so if we move on to the last question, which I'll pose to you first, Isaac, so what are your hopes for the future of the social work profession?
So my hopes for the future of the social work profession is that we attract more social workers, because I think there is a real big challenge around recruitment and retention, that we have social workers that are really able to do their best in their roles, and we have the necessary kind of systems and processes and training. So like the education of social workers, stuff that we've been involved in, social workers are co-producing on an everyday kind of basis. But I hope it continues to grow because it's an important profession, and I hope that we can support social workers in their careers, and we can support people to really access really good social workers. And clearly from a regulatory point of view, I want it to be a profession that is regulated in a way that makes sense to the profession and to the people it supports, and that can only continue to grow.
Agreed. Thank you for those reflections. And Amina, if I could ask you that same question as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jack. I think my hopes are quite linked to our identity as a profession, really. And what I would hope, if I had a magic wand, it's about enabling the profession to become more confident in its kind of skills, in the knowledge that it has, and also the value that it brings to society, so that we're able to speak up about that and feel confident with that. Also, I think it would be really valuable for us as a profession to be able to continue to hold out to our values. Gillian spoke about value-led social work relationships. So if we can hold on to that alongside the professional standards, which I think are actually, for us as a profession, a fantastic guide in how we can, do the work we want to do in that way, and progress that and support everyone who needs our service. So I think professional standards and values are really, really important. The final thing I was thinking about is social work and leadership. And I think if we can encourage and enable growth in a kind of trauma-informed leaderships, so that we work in a culture where there is a real understanding of the impact of social work on social workers, really. And I think that will just help in growing the kind of learning culture, not blame culture, so that people can feel valued and supported to do the best job they can. And that will then help us to do what Isaac spoke about, which is the retention of social workers. Because what we know, my work in the looked after children's teams when I was managing those teams, the social workers who were able to stay longer and support those young people, we saw the best outcomes, because they had relationships and they were able to rely on their social workers, they were able to rebuild their attachments. So there's so much in retention that we need to do, but I think that really needs to, my ambition is for leadership to kind of really embrace that and support social workers to get there and really, have a profession that celebrates them, but also the work that they do. So I think they're my three big ones.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you for those. And yeah, really pertinent and insightful reflections and hopes for the social work profession. So there we go. So yeah, that's the questions that we were hoping to pose today. So I'll bring that to a close. And yeah, again, Gillian, Isaac, and Amina, thank you for your time, both in part of this session and for all the countless hours that you've put into establishing and working on the National Advisory Forum over the last couple of years, or last 3 years. Yeah, hopefully this session has been able to give a little bit of insight into our approach to co-production at Social Work England, and yeah, some of the voices that have really been key and part of that, yeah, on their reflections on social work. So thank you and see you soon. So hi everyone and welcome to this case study of co-production at Social Work England. I'm joined by Sally and Dan, who will be discussing the development of our strategy. So if I can hand over to you first, Dan, to introduce yourself, and if you can explain what the strategy is and why it's important.
Hi, I'm Dan Rachel, Head of Strategic Development at Social Work England. A strategy I found working with lots of people is actually quite an off-putting phrase, so I think it's helpful to take a step back for a second. A strategy is basically a statement where we as an organisation are going in the next 3 years, what we think the big issues are and what we think matters. It then sets out the objectives and priorities. We have 10 objectives, but the things that we hope to achieve in the next 3 years to make progress towards our ambitions. And then it sets out the values and ways of working that we believe are important, because a strategy, as well as saying what we're trying to do, it's really, really grounded in how we try and do it and how we work. The strategy has 3 main themes, just to touch on them very briefly. A prevention and impact theme, which looks towards taking another step forward as a regulator in trying to prevent problems before they occur by looking at how we train and how we develop and how we support social workers and how we re-engage with the profession and get a much stronger relationship based on kind of trust and confidence. The second one is about regulation and prevention, how we become more efficient and transparent as a regulator, and above all, fair in how we conduct our regulation and fitness to practice work. And the final theme is delivery and improvement, which is just putting people at the heart of change. So how we develop as an organisation, we also need to change as an organisation, look at our digital channels, the impact that we can have, and the balancing and evidencing that impact. And the final thing I just wanted to draw out, as I touched on how we do this, there are 3 main elements that really matter to us as an organisation. EDI at the heart of everything we do in how we operate and how we take that into account. Co-production, which we're talking about here, everything we do, we are working with people, listening to and engaging, not just listening to our own voice. And then having a much stronger take about data and insights, so being more grounded in the data that we have and the insight we learn from that, and how we can improve the profession and improve the environment and also improve our own actions as a regulator.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Dan, for that overview of what that work is and why it's important and kind of how it fits into the wider work of Social Work England. Sally, if I can ask you to introduce yourself, and then also if you could share with us what your experience of co-producing the strategy was.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sally Parker. I'm one of the National Advisory Forum members as a person with a lived experience of social work. I joined the strategy team to develop this 3-year theme, knowing absolutely little about the whole idea, the whole project. And we started off very much on that basis, in a room with people who had titles and job roles I knew nothing about. And they knew nothing about me either. So we started from that point, and a conversation about what their view of the strategy should look like. And my view of what the strategy should look like became what our view of the strategy should look like. It was quite an exciting, scary experience, not knowing some of the language, but then I was able to question. I challenged quite a bit, and we really shaped the now final document into what I think speaks the real language in an accessible language with real genuine outcomes that hopefully everybody can understand. And it's based on information for the last 3 years that's been from people listening, from them listening to what people have been saying. So from starting with from a scratch point of them, us not knowing anything about it, we've now managed to develop something that I feel is genuinely co-produced and I hope is understandable.
Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that, Sally. Dan, are there any other thoughts that you have either on the experience of co-producing the strategy? We know obviously Sally was involved, but there was other members of the forum involved, and there was lots of external engagement that happened around that. Yeah, any final reflections on what your experiences of that were?
Thank you. I've got, I think, 2 reflections for me, which is one, the value of co-production. I mean, it's really important that we hear voices that aren't our own when we're coming up with ideas about how we are trying to protect and support the public and the profession. It's really important that we reach beyond the kind of the normal voices to hear kind of people's views from based on their lives and their learning and their creativity about how we work as an organisation. And working with the NAF and with Sally in this co-production, they made that a reality. Without them, it wouldn't have happened. So that's the observation one. And the second observation is just the impact of working with the NAF and with co-production has been so kind of amazing. The document is way better than it would have been. Some of the feedback and conversation from Sally were so helpful. There wouldn't have been an easy read version if it hadn't been suggested. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize about how valuable the co-production work has been and how fun it has been and how much I've actually enjoyed working with Sally and other members of the NAF. This has been a wonderful experience, and the document is far richer and I think far realer than it would have been without that.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for those thoughts, Dan. And yeah, as much as the outcome, it's about co-production being a way of working as well. So if that's changed the experience that you've had in terms of doing this work as well, then that's another positive outcome. So I think that's all we've got time for, so we'll wrap it up there. But thanks to the 2 of you for sharing your experiences and yeah, producing this case study of co-production. Thank you. Hi everyone, so thanks for joining us today to do this recording of a case study of co-production at Social Work England. So yeah, thanks to Hannah and thanks to Iffy for joining me and speaking to us about this piece of work. My name's Jack Harrison. I'm the Participation Officer at Social Work England, so lead on co-production and our National Advisory Forum here at Social Work England. I'll hand over to our 2 guests to introduce themselves before we move on to some questions. So Hannah.
Thanks, Jack. So I'm Hannah Appiard. I'm the Case Review Manager at Social Work England, which is part of the Fitness to Practice process. But for what we're going to talk about today, which is the Decision Review Group, I'm the Decision Review Group's operational lead. So I sort of do the background coordination to make sure that the meetings go ahead and that any actions that come out of it are followed up. And a part of that as well is making sure that we had our experts by experience, which is members of our National Advisory Forum, able to join the meeting to provide that perspective of people with lived experience of social work.
Perfect, thanks for that, Hannah. Do you want to introduce yourself as well, Iffy?
Sure, I'm Iffy Walkero. I'm a member of the National Advisory Forum. I've had a spinal cord injury since 2010. I started working in the National Advisory Forum in Social Work England in 2020, just after first lockdown of the glorious pandemic. But yeah, I've had quite a bit of experience in and out of social work services, and yeah, hopefully that brings some light to today.
Super, thanks for that, Iffy. So Hannah, would you be able to start us off by explaining what Decision Review Group is and why it's important?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Decision Review Group is a group of people within Social Work England and then some external members as well, who I'll explain who they are in a bit, who meet together on a monthly basis to look at a sample of decisions that have been made as part of our fitness to practice process over the previous month. So that's decisions about cases whether they needed to progress into investigations, and also cases where we were looking at final outcomes and what we call sanctions. So looking at whether a social worker's fitness to practice has been found to be impaired, and if so, if there needed to be any restriction to their practice or sanction applied in order to protect the public.
Excellent. Thanks for that really clear overview of that piece of work, Hannah. We'll move straight on into the questions about this piece of work. So Iffy, we'll start with you. So for you, why is it important for people with lived experience to be involved in the decision review group?
So for me, the importance of, before I knew anything about social work, before I used any social work services, all I heard was little snippets and comments about how negative social work is, how bad it is, coming to snatch your kids and that sort of thing. I never really knew what social work actually did. And then I became disabled and used social work services, and I had a very different experience from what I was expecting at the time. But I started to find out why that my experience was so far apart from what I'd heard like before finding out about social work, and even after using social work services. When the opportunity to work with social work came about, I didn't even know I'd get involved with something like this. But once I actually sat in the decision review group meeting, it seems to be very self-aware in the sense that everybody is trying to, and this is my interpretation, on one hand, everybody's trying to work on the things that create those negative connotations or give the negative impressions about social work, but also to be better in so many ways. And as Hannah mentioned, there's people from different organizations there, from different backgrounds, different parts of the organization as well. And all those voices coming together, well, it makes the conversations that we have about different cases within the decision review group like quite productive. For me as a person with lived experience, it took me back to see how a meeting that appears to me quite high level in the organization was very open to me giving my opinions and talking about what I felt about certain decisions that we made and what the policies would be going forward or suggestions that would be made. But I can think of a handful of cases as well where I spotted things that no one in the room would have spotted because they weren't social work service users. Just little things like, okay, there was some, in one particular case, there was some mishandlings, non-intentional, with a particular person, and it just seemed to be okay. These are what we were going to do going forward, how we're going to rectify that going forward. I hope guarantee it doesn't happen again. But for me, I was thinking, okay, that's all well and good. The problem is being solved, but that person actually had a very negative experience, as if it was failure after failure after failure. And yes, they get solved going forward. That's still the person who's had the knock-on effect of having so many failures within the experience with service. And it was almost like a light bulb moment for a few people in the room, and it felt good to be able to point that out. So having my eyes or having the eyes of someone else from the National Advisory Forum with lived experience in there is quite valuable, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And thanks for sharing your reflections and your experiences on that, Iffy. If I could ask you the same question, Hannah, of why I think it's important for people with lived experience to be involved in DRG.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would echo a lot of what Iffy has said. And I think, for me, the big thing for Social Work England is our decision making should not be in isolation. It should not just be something that's looked at by people within fitness to practice themselves. We live it in day out. We need other people's perspectives to help make sure we're remaining on the right track. And I think, like we said before, our part of our role as a regulator is making sure that we maintain public confidence in us as a regulator and in the social work profession. And part of that is making sure that the decisions that we're making about social workers' fitness to practice is easy to understand in terms of the information that it actually contains, but also that it's easy to understand how we came to those decisions. So by having people with lived experience in DRG, they're able to bring life to this and ensure we're meeting those values. And if we're not, they're able to come to that meeting and hold the meeting to account and share their experiences and how it feels to them as people who read these decisions and have experience of working with social workers, to make sure that we sort of honour that perspective and make sure that it's considered whenever we're writing our decision.
Very much so. Yeah, thank you for that, Hannah, and thank you for your reflections. So if I could move on to our last question and ask, I'll come to you first again, Iffy, of what for you has been the impact of DRG being co-produced and having lived experience involvement in it?
So again, as Hannah mentioned, the meeting is co-produced, or the meetings are co-produced with member of the National Advisory Forum to have that lived experience, but also with people from all sorts of professional backgrounds. That might be stakeholders or just have overlapping natures with Social Work England. And we get to hear lots of good practice of things that maybe Social Work England hasn't thought about or done before from other organizations where that particular thing has worked well. We get to hear detailed explanations of what some of the details of a certain case might be, from whether it's from the member of the legal team who's in the meeting, whether it's someone who's there from the fitness to practice processes themselves, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a combination of highly intelligent people, highly aware of the cases being discussed, coming together, putting heads together, and as far as I'm concerned, well, more heads are better than one. It's not. It stops the process from being an echo chamber of people so the organization just sort of trying to figure out things on their own with their own eyes on the same issue. I think it's quite a respectable thing to do, to actually bring eyes in, say, okay, this is what we've done wrong. What do you think, or does anyone have any suggestions of how it could be done better? That sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's extremely valuable to have the meetings co-produced.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that informed perspective is really key to making good decisions. Hannah, if I could ask that same question to you, of what you think the impact of DRG being co-produced has been.
I think it's brought life to DRG. To be fair, I think, you know, it stops it from being sort of like if you said an echo chamber, and it means that actually it makes sure that we always remain focused on the fact that this is about decisions that impact the public and impact public protection. And, you know, our experts by experience really make sure they hold us to account on that and make us think about what impact does this have on the public? What message does this give to the public? So I think it's been absolutely invaluable from that sense. But I think, you know, not just that, I also think it's great to have members from the National Advisory Forum in those meetings, because they can also share what they learn from the decision review group, you know, throughout their own sort of organizations and you know, back out and you know, their own communities and things like that. So I think it helps to bring, you know, they can bring the perspective of regulation to other people as well in ways that other people can understand. So I think it's, you know, it's absolutely a co-produced relationship in terms of it helps both of us, and it helps us all in different ways. So I think it's, you know, it's really important that we've done this, and it's been a massive positive, and, you know, long may it continue.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, thanks for that, Hannah. And I think that accountability is a really important part of what you mentioned there, and the way that doing it in this way increases that. And hopefully in the way that we've done this case study, we've been able to share a little bit more around a function of Social Work England and how we've effectively involved people in improving that. So thank you both for taking part in that and doing that with us. And yeah, we'll end the case study there. Thank you.